Larry, and welcome everyone. Long time no see. I'm going to call our regular meeting of the Town Plan and Zoning Commission to order. Today is Monday, January 4th at 7:35-ish p.m. As you may or may not know, I'm Rob Klee, chair of our Woodbridge Town Plan and Zoning. We have with us here tonight Kathleen Wallace, Larry Greenberg, Yoni Samir, Paul Schatz, Andrew Skolnick, and Jeff Kennedy. Welcome, everyone. Good to see you. Thank you, Chris, for being here and for managing our WebEx and logistics. Thank you to the public who is tuning in as well. We are operating obviously remotely because of the governor's executive orders on COVID-19. So thank you for your patience with the tech. We have a full agenda for our regular meeting tonight, which will begin with a public hearing, I believe, on the New England Brewing Company's application and their materials, all of which are available on the town website. Then I think we have some new business. Chris, am I correct? An application from attorney Bernard Pellegrino for a special exception for a retail liquor establishment. And then I think we'll have some work time and then hopefully I'll be able to close at a reasonable hour tonight. So let's get started with our public hearing. And we do have our applicant with us today. So I believe, unless Chris, I'm missing anything, we should go ahead and have our applicant get started. I do see a hand raised in the gallery from
Michelle Riley, but we're just not in that section yet. So
okay,
Michelle, not taking public comment at the moment.
Yes, public comment will happen right after the applicant's presentation, and then the public will have their 3 minutes to do so at that point. So, Mr. Gray, the floor is yours, and I believe, Chris, he can share screens as necessary.
Doug, do you want to share the screen, or are you just going to talk?
I actually, at this point, I think we'll just talk.
Okay.
Because we still are working through, so this is not a really full submittal for our application at this point. We'll revisit this in February. What I really wanted to discuss was the ARB memo, if you guys are willing to, that came in actually right before the New Year's on that, and to see if P&Z had a chance to review and actually see where you guys fit on this.
So, Mr. Gray, maybe it would be helpful if you kind of walk through. I believe all the members of the commission have the memo, but maybe walk through your view of it and what it's.
Okay. I hate to come off like an a-hole developer, but I will. Sorry about that. As we go through a number of these items, the one thing we need to remember and understand is this is a big building. This is a brewery that has to house tanks that are very large. So in trying to scale this down, we did try to scale it down as we move towards Bradley on this, but our design sensitivity and local vernacular, I believe we did incorporate a lot of these things in here. Unfortunately, ARB was initially a presentation, and then unlike a number of ARB meetings that I've had, and I probably in the teens, there's discussions and give and take, and on this, we presented, had some questions, and then they had a meeting offline and then came up with this memo to you. So basically I have to respond to the memo basically saying, okay, if these bullet points, if we want to take them as like they maybe number them, 1, 2, and 3 just aren't going to happen. I mean, we believe we've taken everything to incorporate the vernacular of the neighborhood, taking it down to pedestrian scale, but to reinterpret the architectural style at this point, and basically just have ARB come in and say, sorry, we don't like this, try again. I mean, it's almost like justice's definition of pornography. which I'm not going to continue. Okay, well, we miss on that one. Go ahead, submit again. Oh, sorry, you miss on that one. So I wanted to see where P&Z stood on a number of these items. You guys have had the elevations at least submitted to you for well over a month, probably a month and a few weeks on this. Chris, correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No, they've had them that long.
Okay. So if we go 4, 5, 7, a number of the other things aren't an issue or a problem, but 1, 2, and 3 are real big red flags to me. And right now we're wrestling with trying to get this down to, I have a sort of scope here that I've got to meet with what the brewery really needs. And we have to try and keep it within a certain rental range where the brewery can afford this. And as we keep turning around on this thing, it's continually going up, and it's becoming more and more difficult to make the numbers pencil. But we think we've come up with something that does address the vernacular of at least the retail to the west of us, and understanding that this is a brewery building. It is not your typical retail development or residential development or anything like that. It is a big building. And we thought we softened the bit with the tasting room and the patio area to pull that out, use some of the vernacular or architectural elements from the property to the west of us. But judging from the memo, ARB doesn't agree with that. And obviously number 3 is a non-starter. Completely. I mean, whereas we've got tanks to house in that, and we're as small as we can go with that to fit the tanks in there.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, can I make a request? If Mr. Gray could, instead of referring to them in 1, 2, and 3, although I'm sort of following along, if he could refer to them as, I understand they're bulleted, so I understand there's 4 on that first page from the ARB letter dated, the ARB memo dated December 29th. We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Do you want to maybe go through these one by one and just let us know your thoughts? You've spent a lot of time on 1, 2, 3. If you don't mind, I mean, we could just, if you could just go one by one, that would be probably a lot easier than skipping around.
Okay.
That would be helpful if you could just go through them and indicate whether it's something that you can accommodate or not.
Okay. Well, the provision made for greater design sensitivity, local vernacular, greater integration of front pavilion to reflect local scale, material, and reinterpreted architectural style. To me, that one ties in very much to number 2 also. And so those are ones that unfortunately I have to dig my heels in. And like I said, I don't want to be the a-hole developer, but at this point, I really do have to be on this. I understand ARB their job is to have input and discuss with us. But this comes down almost like an edict. And so I have to respond in kind. Number 3, reduce if feasible the scale of main rear building physically and visually. We've tried as much as we can. Physically, you cannot. Like I said, we are housing tanks in there used for brewing, and tanks that will be, or more area that will be used for expansion of the tank area. This is as low as we can get that thing. We are within code, actually, with the height of this building on that. Number 4, that is not an issue. Number 5, delineating the materials is, we can come in with the material board if you want. That's not a problem. Site plan with photometrics and everything. Yeah, that would be part of our submittal to P&Z. not to ARB. Why provide the second one on the second page, providing a wider planting buffer between the parking lot, Litchfield Turnpike and Bradley Road. We're a pretty wide buffer that we have on that right now. We're trying to meet what the parking needs of the brewery, where we're not going to impact the rest of the neighborhood when they are fully packed or covered on that. So by reducing parking spaces, that we can accomplish that. Going down another one, provide details of planning berm won't be a problem.
Can we go back to number 6? Are you saying that you think that planting will address this? I didn't fully understand your response, Douglas. I'm sorry.
Providing a wider planting buffer. Yes, we will. We won't be providing a wider buffer, but we will with the details of the planting berm and everything. We'll show that we should be able to show that that buffer's more than ample with how far our setback is on this. Because our intent is we go small planting, sidewalk, then planter with a berm, and then on top of that berm we'll do a hedge, so the cars actually aren't visible to the street.
Could you repeat that, what you just said? And could you just add, I'm trying to follow along with swiveling in my head. Can you repeat what you just said in feet, please?
I honestly don't know on the submittal. I don't have it opened right here.
So I can
What our
comment
setback
on that
is?
if I'm allowed to. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to. I'm Jennifer Hustis. I was a member of the ARB who came up with this list with the other members. In some areas, the buffer is 10 feet. That seems to be the smallest area of buffer, 10 feet. That's on Litchfield Turnpike, close to Bradley Road. And then in some cases, it's about 20 feet. And some places on Bradley Road, it gets a little wider as well. But I think that specifically, I don't understand how he can do all of that planting and the berm and a hedge in 10 feet. So that was part of our concern with the ARB group.
Okay, well, we're still working on the parking area at this point in time. To actually have it, actually a 10-foot buffer will not be an accurate amount on the buffer. Now, I believe actually our code, I'll have to see what was approved by variance on that, but I know we're further than 10 feet away anyway. To me, right now,
what's shown on the drawing, though.
I'm sorry.
That is currently what's shown on the drawing, 10 feet.
Okay. Yeah, however, okay. To me, the most important thing, a buffer in there at 25 feet is not an issue. Architecture Review Board, I didn't know was really as we're finishing up with site planning, some of the issues, I didn't know ARB was involved in site plan as much as they are on that. So if you want to come in and do a minimum of 25 feet with our planting buffer, I don't mind that at all.
Thank you.
And 25 feet allows us to do quite a bit of planting and a berm and a hedge to hide the cars, or definitely keep the headlights of the cars from shining out into the street, which is a pet peeve of mine.
This is the buffer between the parking lot and Bradley Road. Am I understanding?
Either one. Litchfield over
Litchfield.
Bradley.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, we can do 25 feet on both sides. Again, the intent is the development is to present much more of the building, to make the building attractive. No one likes to see, and I hate to develop the concept of it where it's a sea of asphalt before you see the building. But there are unfortunately some constraints as a developer that I do need to have parking. And so otherwise I have a tenant that's not doing the volumes. What I can do and what the size of this building does help too is shrink down the aesthetics of the parking where the parking lot doesn't appear as large as it is. I don't know if any of you, and I'm sure some of you are familiar with North Haven Commons over where the Best Buy is in North Haven. That's one of my developments. And that parking lot is pretty large. However, if you look at it from the street, it's shrunk down because those buildings are quite honestly anywhere from 15 to 20 feet taller than they need to be, depending upon which building. If you saw the parapets in the back of those, they're quite high on that. But that is, again, dealing with the perception of shrinking that down and then landscaping the parking lot accordingly with planters and stuff. But if we want to do if you want to require a buffer of 25 feet on both streets, I don't have a problem with that because that's probably about what it's going to be. Then the details of the planning berm, yeah, we'll when we figure out how the parking lot lays out. Right now, things have changed quite a bit only because we've got to retain every drop of water that comes off. We can't increase any more runoff from the site than currently exists. So we're wrestling with the most economical way to retain the water within the site on this and providing the least amount of impact for the uses anticipated by the tenant on this. So that takes us to the fourth one down on the second page, to soften the corner entrance to food truck parking. Sure, I don't have a problem with that. We want to sort of isolate it anyway because of the outdoor patio on that thing. The next one down, provide revised rendering accurately showing street edge in front of buildings with plantings. Okay, that'll be in the site plan when we make the final submittal to you guys on that. Zoning chart, that's just clean up the next one down. Section 5.10.D.3. Currently, the access drive at the rear of the building is shown partially. Unfortunately, we do need that drive there. Partially located within the 30-foot rear setback. I don't think it is, but if it's not, if it is, we can move that to the edge of the 30-foot setback.
So
On that one.
because I understand that the zoning regulations call for that 50-foot buffer between your anything development on your property and the residential property adjacent. So would that require a zoning variance if
we're the 30-foot, the variances that we have approved are all that we're going to build on. So if we didn't alter the 30-foot setback on that, then the intent is to have a 30-foot landscape setback there.
Right, this is different though. This is a requirement for a buffer on properties that are adjacent to, in this development zone, adjacent to residential properties, as I understand it. So I don't know, would the commission require a variance to not have that 50-foot buffer? we're just trying to bring it to the attention of the commission.
And so, hi, this is Rob, and maybe I'm, which is often the case, unsure of all the procedural sort of postures here, and maybe Chris or, Kathleen, Larry, Paul, someone who's been on the commission longer than I. What exactly we've been presented with a memo from the Architectural Review Board, and I want to make sure that Mr. Gray gets an opportunity to sort of walk through all of the points there. We've opened the public hearing, which under COVID rules, we can continue as needed. But this memo is there for guidance for us as the Planning and Zoning Commission.
It's advisory only, yes.
Thank you. And it's appreciated. So
I'll also share historically that the Architectural Review Board, I believe, was created specifically when the village districts, when that area was created, which is why they are called upon to seek their input for this particular application, because it's within the village district.
thank you, Kathleen. That's also helpful. So we have this in front of us, and Mr. Gray, you were sort of walking through the bullets of the things, and I know we'll come back to the ones on the first page, which seemed most problematic, but it seemed like we were making some good progress on the back things. If I could summarize, it seems like, yes, these are things that when you get down to the detailed sort of site plan will all be sort of covered. So maybe we continue. It looks like we were close to having Mr. Gray sort of walk through all the bullets, and then maybe we come back and sort of talk about the areas which seem to be key sort of, gating sort of things that need more focus and attention. That sound fine? All right, so Mr. Gray, you were on
Yes.
the 50-foot buffer zone and plantings and...
Yeah, so that one, I'm not sure. I have to see what we actually got the approval for the variance on, but whatever we got the approval for the variance on would be where we would have it. Our intent is to be a good neighbor and actually do. My intent, we will have evergreens planted along the back of the building between where the houses view. So they're not looking at a big brewery, even though it's several feet away. I want to soften it so it's not just looming large over their houses on that. So we'll do evergreens. They're not just trees. So throughout the year, it works for them on that one. I'll have to check on what our variance was approved on that one. The next one down, submitted plans to show dumpsters, condensers. Yes, we'll have that in our submittal. That's not a problem. And that's really it.
All right.
So, and I'm sorry, it seems somewhat haphazard, but this came in just not too long ago and wasn't discussed. But to me, obviously, as we hit the first 3 points, for me, as a developer, is pretty much a non-starter. And I'm sorry as I said, I'm sorry to dig my heels in, but unfortunately on this one, I have to.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gray, and for that presentation. Chris, we do have the public here, and so I was wondering if we could have our public comments. Or unless, I don't know if it's traditional, or we also have the Architectural Review Board make any comments and then public and then the commission. I want to defer to how you've done this in the past.
Jennifer is here so that you can ask questions that might rise from the report that they gave you,
Gotcha, but not to make an independent presentation.
not to make a presentation per se. Okay.
Great, thank you.
In terms of the public speaking, you're only working on one particular section. You haven't had a full presentation on the whole thing. So,
Well, it didn't sound like we were going to have that tonight. It
Right.
looked like
so
tonight
I'm
we were
just saying that normally public comment would be after you've received the entire comment.
Yeah, but it looks like we only have one person's
Okay.
hand raised. So let's go to our public comment and then we can open it
Okay,
up.
so we've got
Our
Michelle
commission.
Riley, and I've unmuted her.
Hi there, everybody. My name is Michelle Riley. Thank you so much for allowing me to speak. I was on the meeting last time as well, and I just have a few concerns and a few questions, and I know typically you can't answer these questions, but I'd like them noted so we can maybe get some answers going forward, and they could be part of the public record. I'd like to say that my family has been in Woodbridge in several capacities, residential, commercial, and business owners for over 100 years. My great-grandparents gifted plots of land all up and down Landon Street and Metler Street to their families, to have their families stick together and build homes and live there. I happen to live in one of those now. It was passed down to me several generations later. As I said, we are all business owners here, and I continue to be, and I support business and I support development, and I certainly want the town to prosper. I have several concerns, not only with this application, but with the application that's next on the agenda with the liquor license. As I said, I live on Landon Street, and if these zoning laws and applications are considered and changed, I will have 3 liquor permittees bordering my home. 3 entities who sell or serve liquor. And actually, one, if this is approved, it will produce liquor. I'm concerned with things like signage, pollution, noise, smells, traffic, the capacity of the brewery, what borders will be in place, what fencing will protect our homes. And again, I'm all for development and really creating a new tax base for the town. However, I live in the Village District, which has been dual zoned for many years for commercial and residential. I accept that. But what I don't accept is the fact that we are getting surrounded, and our open space and our backyards and our view and vistas will be affected by all of this. And I look at West Rock right now, it's absolutely gorgeous. I see that mountain every day at the sun sets. And it's beautiful. And I value that. And I value that my ancestors valued that and purchased the land here and gifted it. But I'm just concerned that all of this is just, getting to be too much. And the developer, mentioned the ARB memo. Well, I just scoured the website, couldn't find that ARB memo anywhere. I have no idea what he's talking about, that 1, 2, and 3 are non-starters. I would have to think that has something to do with my concerns. And the tanks, this is going to be a monstrous building. What is that going to do for all of the things that we enjoy living in Woodbridge? And I'm concerned about it. So again, I know that you cannot answer, but we'd really like more specifics on the tanks and what the building will look like, and the 50-foot proposed buffers and berms and hedges and things. We live here. There are people who live here in this village district, in this commercial, multi-zoned area, but we'd like to preserve what everyone else has in Woodbridge as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Riley, for your comments. I will ask if there are any other members of the public who wish to make a comment.
Michelle, can you unraise your hand, please?
Did I
I'm
hear?
not seeing anybody else's hand raised. Rob.
Okay.
I can't unmute. I can't unraise it for some reason.
Okay.
But I'm finished. But thank you.
Okay.
Thank you. I don't see any other hands raised. Okay, so now I'll turn back to our commission members for questions of the applicant and opening up to them, or questions for Jennifer if they need clarification on the memo. Though, Chris, I will note, is the memo on the website?
You know, I have to go back into the website to check. Betsy was out last week and I'm not sure that she got to post everything that got sent. So I'll check.
Okay. Appreciate
I think it's there.
Yeah, my quick look, I couldn't find it either.
Okay.
And it's not under the architectural review boards.
No, it would be something submitted for this hearing. So we'll make sure it gets up. It's not an issue.
Okay. So questions from our commission members for Mr. Gray.
Question.
I think I saw Jeff stand first, and Paul, you've talked a lot.
So Jennifer, when you reference a modern front porch, what does that mean? And is that because you're trying to make something consistent with a village district that Kathleen had mentioned and where this area is? What do you it is a brewery, so it serves a lot of people. So help me to understand what you mean by that.
So I think the Architectural Review Board, I think the mandate is to kind of make suggestions to kind of enhance the beauty of this part of the town. And I think there's sort of a little bit of a precedence already set by 245 Amity and Coachman Square, and they're taking some traditional elements. Those are bigger buildings than houses, and they're taking some traditional elements and they are kind of reusing them for more commercial type spaces. And our concern with the brewery is the size, and the idea of the front porch on the brewery is really, really out of scale. It's just really hard to kind of see how that's going to look nice. And I want to say that I love the idea of this brewery as a gathering space, and I think that what they talked about at the BAR meeting about kind of having it in as an event space, a real draw, I think is great. And I just feel like they are sort of, I think with the building that they've designed, it does not enhance the community. I think it just is a deterrent. I think it's huge. I feel very bad for the people on Metler Street and Landon Street with the size of this and the scale of it, and they're proposing metal siding. It's not going to feel like it fits in the neighborhood.
So it might have a more industrial aesthetic or a more brewery aesthetic than one that you would imagine might be imagined otherwise in a business district with a front porch or Main Street USA type look. Is that what you're saying?
I think so. I mean, it's sort of, my office is on Research Drive, and I'm right up against the sports center that has, it's probably about the same size as that, although I think this building is going to be taller than the sports center. And so that has that metal siding, and it's sort of very Butler building-ish. And I think that that's going to be a real, I think it's not going to be a beautiful asset for the town, although I think it could be.
So you don't find industrial chic an appealing look, I guess.
No, that's not true. But this is not industrial chic. This is
okay.
This is not that. But I think that the architect also did this building called the District in New Haven that is industrial chic, and that's fabulous. That's a great building. I would love to see something like that here. But this is not that. And I do have. I mean, I sort of gathered some images, and I know it's a really big building, but I have gathered some images, if anyone would like to see them, of buildings I think that are in the same vein as what the developer and the architect are trying to do, but I think present a friendlier face.
Douglas, can you speak to that and respond to her comments?
All I can really speak about is the district. I'm very familiar with the building, and it's industrial chic because it actually was an industrial building that was converted into more retail space. I think in looking at trying to do, and it's a much shorter building, understanding that the tanks we have to house in this big building behind, you're not going to do it in a concrete tilt up look or anything like that. Just because of the height that we have to deal with in there, we'd have to have way too many column lines inside that just isn't feasible for the brewery and their tank location and everything. That's why if you look at a number of breweries that are in the area, typically they are just metal buildings. And because it's the most economical way to get the height and to fit the tanks in and make it work. And that's, again, as a developer, what I'm wrestling with here. I think in taking the back building to slap something on the front that's a different look, I think would be more out of character on that. We've spent a lot of time going back and forth and trying to soften and take in the front much more down to a pedestrian level on that. And
How does the style of the building compare, other than in size, obviously, to the style of the building that they currently occupy?
The style of the building they currently occupy, it's a metal building, but it is just a big white box.
Well, that's my question. Are your plans more architecturally interesting than
hopefully
the
everyone thinks so? Yes.
I would just encourage commission members to read Appendix 1 of the regs, which talks about architectural review guidelines for the Woodbridge Village District. And it talks about them being guidelines, and it just addresses some of these issues and acknowledges that at times there might be a structure proposed that's different from those on adjacent properties, and the goal is to just is to, I guess, do one's best. The developer is expected to do their best to. I mean, it says when proposing a structure different in style from the adjacent properties, find elements such as materials, color, massing, and landscaping which can unify the different projects. And again, these are guidelines, and I appreciate the input of the ARB, but you know, the purpose of the Woodbridge Village District is to create thriving, diverse, mixed-use residential and commercial communities. So I think we have to just look at all of this in its entirety.
I agree. I agree.
I do want it to look good. I guess I would like to have a sense of and I guess we need to look at plans, but how does the height compare to heights around it? I mean, Coachman Square is a pretty tall building. So I don't know.
Maybe I honestly, I think we're a good like 12 to 15 feet higher than Coachman Square. But unfortunately, my hands are tied on that because we have to house these tanks that are in there. So our back building is a very large building, and we tried to soften it as much as possible where it doesn't look like the box that they're in right now, with the skylights and the front building taking it down and those sort of things. But it is still, in terms of mass, it is still a big building. There's no way around it. I would never deny that. It is a big building, but we have to have it that size because they are expanding from where they are now. We're taking them to almost 4 times the size.
Yeah.
For production. They very, very much would like to still be part of the community in Woodbridge. I'd like to keep them in Woodbridge. But most of the things that we're talking about here on the building size and the scale and those sort of things, we're dealt a card that we can't change.
Right. I mean, I think that we need to do our due diligence as well to make sure that, I don't know, that we've, dotted our I's and crossed our T's in terms of looking at this. And I know I'm not ready to do that right now fully. I know that we've received some plans, but as you've indicated, Douglas, they're not the full site plans, right?
Yeah, and that's why we're not here. That's why at this point in time, this meeting isn't scheduled for approval. This is much more, in fact, I had moved it back so we could get our hands on everything on this. This was much more of, it was suggested that we still keep the slot and just to discuss the ARB memo here, because obviously for me as a developer, the town is coming in and saying, well, yeah, sorry, but we don't like what you want to do. Okay, I need to know that now.
Yeah, so Douglas is Rob Clay. I appreciate that. And I also, and hopefully the commission members, I know Chris went ahead and sort of gave us this big thing that's been now, means I can't eat dinner because it's now covered over with this. It's a brewery. They have to brew beer. They need tanks. They need a large building. It's pretty clear to me, and it's clear to me that their current facility is a big, kind of dilapidated white sort of box. This to me looks like a honest, and when I looked at it, and granted I'm not an architect, I thought it looked like a place I would like to go. And it had a patio that looked interesting to me, and that seemed to bring a front end, the brew pub, the sort of dining area at a scale that seemed reasonable to me, recognizing that, yeah, out back they're brewing beer, and a lot of it, which is not a bad thing to have in our community. So I read the memo, which I appreciate, from the review board as particularly bullet 3, reduce if feasible the scale of the rear building physically and visually. It sounds from the applicant to have beer brewed in large tall tanks, you cannot reduce the size and scale. So that's not feasible. So to me, that's a point where you then move on and say, okay, if you can't make it any shorter because of tank size and whatnot, and that makes sense to me. You're not going to make this look like a residential building. It's not, it's a brewery building. So I'm not sure what a front porch means, frankly. And again, I'm not an architect. And I think this is a vast improvement of what's currently their current location, and has to me a sort of aesthetic of a brew pub restaurant with a large outdoor patio and food trucks. Sounds reasonable. Now, the detail in the next part of the memo is about making sure that there's appropriate shading and berms and whatnot. And it seems like Mr. Gray, as you went through, that most of those things are possible and will be outlined in the detailed site plan to find ways to sort of screen and shade from the neighbors, and that all seems fine and appropriate. Yeah, so that's my 2 cents, is that this to me looked like a place that I would be happy to go to. Other commission members.
I look forward to hearing how you've resolved the water runoff issues and seeing the final or the next iteration, whatever the right word is, of the site plans.
So just to be clear, what we have received, this giant packet, is not the final This was what got to
Correct.
ARB,
Correct.
and then ARB makes their comments, and then some adjustments are possibly made, and then we're going to get another packet. Is what's going to happen. Understood. Okay. You need to jump the line on you, Paul. Commissioner Schatz.
That's okay. Robert disparaged me earlier, so now I'm shy. I have a question. So I too am holding this. I want to make sure I'm clear. So a comment was made about the front porch. So I just want to make sure, is this the front porch?
Yeah, I believe that's the reference to the front porch. Yes.
Okay. So Jennifer, there you are. Can you speak to what is of concern about the front porch? Is it the width of it, the number of people on it?
I think the 3D rendering is not quite accurate. You see the little people in there, and I don't believe they're of the right scale. So I think that this porch is actually quite enormous, and it's very tall. You can kind of see the little small people doors. So they have big windows, which I think are nice, and then they have the little small people doors. And if you imagine, like they're showing people, and then the people doors, the people are shown almost as big as the doorways. So like there's something going on in this 3D rendering to make it not look as enormous as it actually will look. And so I think that the notion of trying to put like a little front porch that's residential in scale on this massive building, it's blown up to such a degree that it's just not going to look right. It's going to look out of scale. It doesn't have, I think if you were going to actually do some kind of a porch, I think you actually need to bring this scale with materials and posts and beams, delineation of these elements that actually are to a human scale and not to this giant, massive scale. So I think that it's going to look like, I don't think it's going to look well.
Actually, to address some of that, those windows, the height of those windows actually underneath the cover are the exact same height of the windows in the district. So they're
right. Like
10
you said,
feet tall,
that's a very different, that's a scale thing, and that's a very different kind of a building where you expect that industrial. This is sort of like, I don't know, farmhouse. But the interesting thing to me is that those posts on that porch are like 30 feet apart. On a normal porch, you might have posts that are 8 feet apart. So you can see it's just blown up, and it's not refined. And I think the materials, the metal is also problematic. But anyway, that was my comment about the porch.
It's, I'll just point out that in the memo, it says the front terrace should be treated more as a modern front porch. Maybe it's not being treated as a modern front porch because of the scale.
I'm not really sure. That was put in by another member, not me, the terrace comment. I think that from my point of view, I think the terrace is fine. It's large, but I think that doesn't bother me. I think that's fine. It's really the building itself that.
So so just the size of the fact that it's a brewery, which is large.
Could I share my screen? Would you?
I'm sorry.
Would it be possible for me to share my screen, or not? I mean, I think that.
So if you do, you'd have to submit whatever you do into the record.
Okay, all right. So I think it's a missed opportunity, unfortunately, because I think that Mr. Gray commented that this is going to be a destination spot, and I think that sounds like a great idea. But I think when you have a building like this that is it's not going to go away. It's going to be built, and views from those homes are going to be disrupted, and it will never go away. And it's bigger than it should be in this area. I think it's probably almost twice as tall as Coachman Square or 245. I mean, we don't have any reference point with those. I think if I were you guys, I would ask for a reference and how tall is it compared to those buildings.
Well, that is something we'll likely do.
Good. Yeah. I mean, I know
Paul,
know,
did you
because
have any other questions of the applicant? Paul?
No, I'm good. Thanks.
So I'm looking. So Chris, we've opened the public hearing, but we've only opened it to just look at this. Received the memo from the Architectural Review Board. We're not making any decisions now, but Mr. Gray, what else would you
I think
want to hear from us? Or
no, I think I've heard enough. I appreciate that. I understand the position it's difficult that I'm putting you guys in at this point in time. I just wanted to get some initial feedback on this and understanding that it is a brewery that we are placing there, and there's only so much you can do with this, and the height is what it is. I mean, we've tried to soften it as much as we could, both physically and aesthetically, but that's really all we can do on this thing. The idea of the patio cover out there it's not meant to be a residential building. It's not meant to look like a
Mr. Gray, that
residential
you've
building.
already obtained a variance with respect to the building height?
Actually, we did. Yes, we did. However, the building height actually is within code. With even without the variance, it was recommended that we still submit the height of the building, so the variance board is aware of the height of the building. But when the way your code is written, it's the average height of the roof, and we're like 3 feet under code anyway. But we do have a variance for the building as you see it. Even though it's not needed, it was recommended just to be certain. Let's submit it anyway.
And that point about the access drive, that's going to be addressed in your discussion of the variance in your final site plan. The second to last bullet point that you respond to that about the access drive potentially needing to be pushed back. I think you said, just to be clear, I think you said it's going to be, you have a variance, but I just wanted to be clear.
Yeah, it will be whatever our variance is. It will be fit within whatever we have. Yeah, we're not trying to submit something that's different than what's been approved.
Understood.
Variance board. Yeah, and I have to apologize. The submittal at this point really was much more to get ARB, get it on their agenda, get their comments, and then basically get a warm and fuzzy on where that sits. So quite honestly, I can.
And Mr. Gray, just so we're all clear, that bullet is confusing because it talks both about a 50-foot buffer zone of plantings between the development one zone and the residential zone, but then it also says that this access drive, which I think I see is basically a driveway running behind the building. It says that it is within the 30-foot rear setback line, which I'm again trying to sort of understand from the drawings. And I guess I'm curious about whether it's you'll need to pay close attention because I don't think I fully understand. And maybe
Yeah, and quite honestly, I don't know. I'll have to talk to my civil engineer and see the layout. And that drive where that sits, honestly, is much more, that's put in there much more for fire. So fire has access on all sides of the building. Because if we don't have that on the south side of the building, if we don't have that drive, then we actually don't have any place for a fire truck. Should a fire be somewhere on that side of the building, or you don't have access for the fire truck there. So also along that drive, we'll end up with a fire hydrant.
okay. And the access drive, I don't understand from the bullet, and maybe you can explain, Jennifer. Is the whole driveway supposed to be pushed back, which looks like it's right up against the building? So I don't know how you're going to move the whole building.
So right now the driveway is within that 50-foot buffer. So the way I understood the regulations is the buffer is for planting. So the drive is shown in that buffer. And currently where the expansion is being shown is 55 feet away. So the edge of the expanded building is 55 feet. So that is just beyond where the buffer should be. So if they ever expand in that direction, they won't have room for the drive to go around it. I mean, that's the way I understood the regulations, but maybe I'm. It seems like the buffer, nothing should be in the buffer. Parking, driveway, building.
The 30-foot minimum side lot, though, is about where the building is.
I'm sorry, the 30 feet?
There's a 30-foot part. I mean, again, this is why your bullet is not very clear, because it says that there's a 30-foot rear setback line.
Yeah, which is right about where the driveway is right now. So
I mean, I'm looking at it again. Everyone's looking at. I'm looking at what I'm trying to piece together what your bullet means. That it looks like this dotted line, which is the 30-foot side building setback, the fire access driveway is on top of it. Is that what you're?
That is what I think. The thing is that the setback is not really part of our objection. It just was pointing out to you that that's where that 30 feet was, and the buffer is 50 feet.
Okay. Any other commission members with questions, comments, thoughts for Mr. Gray at this moment? No, hearing none.
I'm not sure there's anything to rule on. I really do appreciate the willingness to be much more informal and talk this over at this point. And thank you very much for, again, listening and opining and sharing some thoughts.
Appreciate that. And I guess next steps, we'll leave the public hearing open. We encourage you to come. Oh, I don't know if I encourage them to come to our next meeting because we have the thing that we were just dealing with before we got in this meeting scheduled for them. So timing wise, how can we be efficient and effective, Mr. Gray, to keep your project moving forward?
I think at this point it's much more on me to finish up with our retainage and addressing some of the points that ARB has come in and try and incorporate everything we can and get a full submittal package to you for approval. So it's much more on me at this point. And again, I do appreciate the time and the willingness to be more informal on this.
Okay, excellent. Anything else from commission members?
So Rob, do you want to continue this to your February 1st meeting and then just go from there depending on
I
what
mean,
you want to do?
because all we have in front of us is the ARB report. What would we do? And we could, I'm just speaking out loud, we could go, close. Is this just a partial public hearing just on the ARB review would we give a sense of the commission, have a meet, in our business meeting and, give more formal direction? I'm asking because I don't know the right approach here.
I generally
I think we've already given rather, in some cases, more subtle than other direction.
And so in that case, do we just keep the hearing? What would we be closing if we close the hearing?
well, that's the
I
whole
don't think
point.
we're closing because we don't have the final application yet.
Right.
Okay. So we leave it open.
Yeah.
To February 1st.
Sure.
Okay.
Yeah, I think just to continue. Yeah.
Can I just point out that I'm going to go back a little about buffers in 510D3, which is quoted in the ARB memo. It actually says where it's not feasible to comply with the minimum width required above due to lot size and shape or existing structures, the commission may modify the width requirements provided that the buffer area meets the intent of these regulations. I don't know. I guess we just need to know what the actual final site plan is and do our due diligence.
Thank you, Kathleen. That's helpful. Okay. Thank you, Mr. Gray. Do we need a motion to continue?
Yes, you do. To be consistent.
So moved.
I have a
What's
second.
that? Oh, that was Paul. Sorry, Paul. I
was
was
Paul.
speaking up.
Okay. It's moved and seconded. All in favor of continuing to our next meeting in February 1st? I'll say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? We'll see you next month, Mr. Gray. Thank you. And thank you, Jennifer, as well for your input and advice.
Thank you, everyone, and Happy New Year.
Thank you.
Thanks.
You too.
Take care, guys. Thanks again.
Thanks.
Bye.
Chris, I don't know if we have our next. Apologies, I need to figure out where my papers are.
I don't know that I get to send. It's been a little bit busy here. But you do have an application from Attorney Pellegrino for the boutique wine shop, whatever it's called, at 245 Amity Road. So it just needs to get scheduled for a hearing.
Didn't we already decide that application?
Yeah.
You decided to amend the regulations so that they could make an application.
Oh, okay.
This is our multi-step process. That we've changed our rules, but now he needs to come in for a special exception. So we are stacking things on top of that February meeting in a way that's a little concerning. But I don't know. Do folks?
How long?
You want to do it in a meeting, Rob? I'm trying to figure what that.
I'm hesitant to even. I'm hesitant to even say the words of scheduling, special or off cycle meetings because of the Orchard Road, which will consume a ton of time.
I wouldn't do that yet. How long, Chris, statutorily can the zoning amendment that relates to 2 Orchard Road remain open?
Well, we have the COVID thing that's in place. So you originally have a certain time frame, and then under COVID you get another 45 days. So to the best of my knowledge, you can at least get through February to the beginning of March with that one.
For just the public hearing.
for
portion,
just
and
the
then-
hearing, and then you have a decision time frame after that.
Okay, so if necessary, we can put a time limit on the hearing with respect to that application for the February meeting, similar to the one that we had tonight.
Correct.
Maybe, so, okay, so let's schedule them all for that February 1st.
And you're starting at 6:30 that night. So if you said went
And
from, as long as we don't
ending-
have any glitches with WebEx, we can start at 6:30 and do a hearing till 8. And then if you want to do these other two small hearings, then
It'll end on
it's
February
still the
2nd.
same day that you end.
Yeah, let's do that for now.
Okay.
So Rob, for the 2 Orchard Road application, is the plan to finish public comment, then have Attorney Herbst present, then have the commission ask questions?
Yeah, there will also be a presentation by folks that the town has hired.
So,
So I don't know when we'll get to ask our questions, so it may not be that February 1st. That may need a continued hearing for us. For those who are planning and trying to map it out, my guess is the Herbst presentation and the applicants sort of back and forth will take, and whatever the public that we didn't get to. I can try to have I am hesitant to do it, but I'm trying to encourage the public to only those who have not spoken yet, type of thing. But yeah, part of
Well,
it is making sure we have. a
And
forum.
I'll point out though that when I don't know, guys, when was it? When people were yelling at us and saying that they were paying us for this work, so we needed to make sure we did our job at that meeting that was at the senior center. After that, we decided and were able to enforce that people were only allowed to speak once. That if they'd already contributed their comments, they could only speak once. And we announced it and enforced it. Chris, you'll know better. You'll remember better than I what the details were of it.
The other thing that you could ask is that if they've submitted written comment, just to note that they've submitted written comment and not read it to you again. And then just if they have additional comment to make, ask them for that.
I know. But people also want to feel like they've been able to participate and be heard. So that's always, we actually probably shouldn't be talking about this or deciding this
No,
now.
probably
But-
not.
But we will go with Orchard Road first on that February date with a time limit on it, and then have these 2 hearings follow afterwards, which we can hopefully let the applicants know so they can schedule accordingly and not have to sit through the first hour and a half.
So do you want to pull an hour and a half? You want to do an hour and a half on?
An hour and a half on Orchard Road, and then
Okay.
is that
Well, that gets you to 8. So that's a reasonable time. And then you do the other 2 hearings. Because
is that okay, folks?
Yes,
Mm-hmm. And one WebEx.
one
And-
WebEx.
one WebEx, yay.
I'm just going to say, and I don't know if I'm allowed to say it, but I think that, Rob, I agree with you that people deserve to be heard, but they don't need to be heard again and again and again and again, which would prevent other people from being heard.
while I totally agree with Kathleen, in the interest of time, one of my favorite expressions, the devil's advocate part is that some people have already submitted written comments and spoke at both hearings. And I just want to make sure that in the end, people don't feel like they weren't heard, disenfranchised, whatever phrase you want to use. But I agree with that we don't need to hear the same people over and over again to make the same comments.
I mean, I think that we need to say at the beginning of the hearing that we have read however many comments. We all have to attest to having read all the submitted comments before the hearing, so it's on the record. We're not going to lie about that. And so that it's on the record. I mean, we've done this before where we realized we really had to ask people to respect the time of the commission and more of others so that everybody who wanted to submit something or to say something could. That's.
Right. Thank you both, Kathleen and Paul. Appreciate it. So I'm sorry, Chris, do we have a motion and second?
You had a motion. I don't think you voted. That was discussion on your motion.
Oh,
No, you did have a motion. Never mind. You were fine.
right. So we are scheduled for February 1st.
Yep.
And work session, we're not going to discuss New England Brewery because it's already, it's being continued to that date. Anything from Scrog?
If you really want to hear it, I'll read the agenda again, but nothing that had any impact upon the town of Woodbridge. Can I leave it at that?
Sounds good.
Sounds good.
Anything else, Chris, in your role as the zoning enforcement officer?
No, you've been keeping me busy this way. So that's about it.
How about minutes?
I gave you minutes.
I know, that's what I'm saying.
Yes. Do we?
Many minutes.
Yes, lots of minutes. Have folks had a chance? Someone want to?
Well, I reviewed 4 or 5 of them, and I'm happy to share. Some of them, it's little errors. Some of them repetition, missing word, that sort of thing. Basically, they're good. I'm happy to share what I found with everyone and with Chris. I think I usually do a pretty good job on these, but I think basically they're good with some minor edits. At least the 4 I've reviewed.
Which 4 of those? Because we'll move them in
Chronologically, October 5th, October 19th, November 2nd, November 30th.
So a motion to approve the minutes from those 4 dates.
So move subject to Kathleen's edits.
Second.
Moved and seconded. Any further conversation? Hearing none. All in favor of approving those 4?
Aye.
Aye.
I'll abstain to the October 5th minutes.
Thank you, Larry. Alrighty, so approved those 4 with subject to Kathleen's minor edits and comments, and with Larry's abstention on October 5th. Alrighty, that's enough for today. Motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night.
Aye.
Good night, everyone. Thank you.
Hi, crew.
Thanks, Rob.
Good job.
Thank you.
Good job.